when we started to make 4, when they asked me to do number 4, I did some research. I went to, first I went to Massachusetts, to MIT and to Harvard to meet with some scientists there who were working on, I was asking about future science. What's the expectation of science? What are you excited about that might happen in the next 10, 15, 50 years? And I met some people who were part of the SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And I learned a lot from them. I was very excited about their ideas and what they were doing. But I was particularly touched by a conversation that I had with a physicist named Philip Morrison. You got to look him up, a very brilliant guy. And I spent about an hour with him at his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I said to him, finally, have you ever seen a movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still? The original Day the Earth Stood Still was directed by Robert Wise. And he said no, he didn't know the film. But so I explained to him, I said, there's a man comes from another planet to warn Earth that it's headed on a destructive path and you've got better stop this because it's affecting other planets and so forth. And he walks into this person from another planet walks into a room with a blackboard with a very complicated equation on the blackboard. And the equation has been put there by a character played by an actor named Sam Jaffe, who's sort of the Einstein of the story. He's the brilliant Earth physicist of the time. And he's got this equation on the board, but there's no resolution. He hasn't figured out the answer to this equation. There's sort of an equal sign at the end of it, and no answer. So this guy takes a look at this equation, he picks up the chalk, and he writes in the solution. Well, when Sam Jaffe, the actor, walks in the room and he sees that, he realizes that he's in the presence of a superior intelligence. And he says to this person, there are a lot of questions I'd like to ask you. So the suggestion is that this person is from a planet that's ahead of ours scientifically. They probably have a cure for cancer. They probably have found answers to various scientific questions that we have been unable to resolve. Maybe we could learn something from these people. So I said, if you, Dr. Morrison, were in the presence of a person who came from another planet like that, what question would you ask? And he got very upset with me. He said, it's not going to work that way. I said, what do you mean? He said, because that assumes that they speak your language, that they're on the same track that we scientifically that we are, that they're just simply 100 or 200 or 500 years ahead of us, but on exactly the same path. It's not going to work that way. He said, if we make contact with people from an alien civilization, we will have a very difficult time even learning how to communicate with them, let alone ask them questions about cancer or something, Because he said their method of communication may be so foreign to us that we may have difficulty communicating with them. Well, that set me up with a whole new line of thinking about the making of Star Trek 4. And I began to think, what if there were an alien presence coming to Earth and we didn't know how to communicate with them? It doesn't always work to use the universal translator, you know what I mean? So that set up that part of the story. And then I was reading a book called Biophilia by a scientist who was writing about the loss of species on this planet, on Earth. And he was saying that within 10 or 15 years we would be losing thousands of species off this planet, and many of them may never have even been discovered. We wouldn't even know what we had lost because we hadn't gotten to them. They're already gone. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine one night about endangered species, and up came the subject of whales. Mentioned humpback whales. Particularly interesting and magical because they do this whale song. They have these sounds that they make. And these sounds that they make are they're called whale song. And they go from whale pack to whale pack around the planet. And they tell us that a pack singing a certain song, making a certain group of sounds in the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere down on the other end of the planet, in a short period of time, they pick up the same song and repeat it, and it goes around until it changes. And when it changes all around the planet. The whales start to sing. You can lay the pattern of one group of whales' song on top of another thousands and thousands of miles away, and it'll match. And then when it changes, it matches again. So it's a magical thing. What are they doing? Are they communicating to each other? Is it navigational? We don't know. And I thought that feels like what Morrison was talking about. We don't understand their language and why they speak it that way. And that's how the story of the Star Trek 4 came into place. It was a combination of understanding that we may not be able to communicate with these aliens when they do come to Earth, and the communication may not be meant for us. It may be meant for some other species on the planet. So in this case, it was the whales. And that's how the story developed. Now here's the final touch of this story. When the movie was done, and the studio, you're asking about studio people and putting information and certain ideas into these movies, and is it difficult? When the movie was done, and the administration people saw it, I got a call from the head of the studio who said to me, when that probe opens the movie and it makes that strange sound like whoop, whoa, whoop, whoa, whatever that sound was, it's going to confuse the audience because that sound is meant for the whales to hear. And the audience doesn't know what that's all about. I said, that's right, that's intentional. We're not supposed to understand it. Later on, we'll understand that they're trying to talk to whales. Well, they said, we think you ought to put subtitles on there. And the subtitle should be, should you say, where are you? On the subtitle. Can you believe that? I said, no, we're not going to do that. No. Well, we think you're wrong. The audience are going to be very upset because they won't understand what's going on with this movie. So I refused. We fought that battle, and I won at least temporarily. And then when we had the screenings, they do a test screening with maybe 50 or 60 people in the audience, and they ask questions. What did you think of this? What did you think of that? Did you like the story? Did you like which character did you like? And then they specifically asked this question. Did you understand what the communication was? Yeah, no problem. So the head of the studio turned to me and said,